You're ready, Jeff.
All right, thank you, Brandy. I would like to call to order the March 23rd, 2023 Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes, Dolly.
Here.
Case.
Here.
Brink.
Here.
Dargis Johnson.
Here.
Aletsky.
Present.
Spire.
Here.
And Culhane, Ford, and Hanson are absent. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Third item on the agenda is invitation for public comment participant submittal. If there's anything not on the agenda that anyone here wishes to talk about, there will be time at the end, and just let Brandy know. Fourth item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Fifth item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 9th meeting. Can I get a motion and a second for approval?
Personally, I'm still going through them. It was such a long meeting and I couldn't open them up on the website.
That is so strange, and I was going to check that.
Anyone else read them? Want to do a motion or a second?
I had the same problem, so I haven't gotten them ready either. And Diana's not here. She's our minutes lady.
Or if no one read them, would you want to do a motion to table them?
Just give us a minute.
Okay, I'll give us a second.
Yeah, we'll have to, because when we've checked it, I mean, we're able to open it, so definitely let us know ahead of time so we can look into that and kind of find the issue with it.
Yep, Brandy, it looks like they're visible if you open the entire agenda packet, but if you click the link from the main agenda page, it's asking for a login.
Oh, okay. So that's a helpful hack then. If you open the agenda packet so that it goes on its own, then you should be able to see it. So even when you went to like March 23rd and then Plan Commission?
Yeah, and then you get that, and then you click on that blue line. Yeah, that's where he's saying that click on that, and then.
Yeah.
That's what you get.
So if you do, and that we'll definitely check on that so that doesn't continue to happen. But if you go over here and just click agenda packet, then you should be able to see them. But that still shouldn't happen. So we'll look into that.
Yeah, I thought it
too.
used to work the other way. But
Yeah. Yes, sorry about that, but that's good to know. Thanks for looking at that too, Blake, so we can
Yep.
troubleshoot that.
I'll make a motion to approve.
No second.
I had a motion and a second. Anyone else have any further questions as they're skimming through them? No. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Sixth item on the agenda is our regular agenda. 6A is commission consideration of resolution 2023-06, a plat for Jern Schulte Industrial Edition. Brandy, will you take over, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So I'll pull up the vicinity map here. And then also on GIS. This property that we're looking at, the Jern Schulte Lot 9 of Jern Schulte Edition or Industrial Edition is adjacent to 14th Avenue Southeast. And so that is like directly east of the John Deere along 81, South 81 there. And so this property is currently all one lot here at 707 14th Avenue Southeast. So they have constructed contractor shops on the western portion of this lot. So that is what this replat is accomplishing. It is subdividing off the portion that the contractor shops are on. And then 14th Avenue, you'll notice too that the infrastructure, the pavement does not extend to this lot. So that's what the development agreement and the approved construction plans, city staff, engineering, everybody has reviewed and approved the submitted construction plans to extend the public infrastructure of 14th Avenue Southeast to the east so that it goes to the extent of the replatted lot line. So it will be extended not all the way to the end of Lot 9. They will do that in portion as the property continues to develop. So it will extend to this eastern property pin here. So with that, I will stand by for any questions.
Go ahead.
Brandy, speaking of the street, is this going to be built as a full street, or are they only responsible for building half a street since they're only developing half of it, I guess, or the north side?
Yes, good question. So this specific property owner would only be responsible for their half street section. Now, how our process usually goes is when these lots are platted up front and you're dedicating right of way, the developer would need to build all of the public infrastructure at that time so you have those things in line before these types of situations happen. So these are kind of the just past not administration, but like how these were administered in the past, that the development agreements weren't followed through necessarily as well, obviously. So what we're doing now is, this isn't typical, but we cannot tie that developer to being responsible to build the full street section. So what with the development agreement and the construction plans are obligating the property owner to be responsible to install the half street section and the public infrastructure. Now, we are working with the property owner to the south and then also to the west to get a full street section installed with this project, though.
So last week we had a lot of conversation about half streets and the issues that happen when half street development occurs. And most recently I heard a newsworthy comment by the mayor that we need to be looking at development comprehensively. So would we even seriously think about, from a city standpoint, is if you've got a willing developer on the north side, is it possible that we still get the street built, the city picks up the south half, and then they assess it back to the individual on the south?
Yes, if we were not able to have participation from both, and we had initial meetings with these property owners up front for that reason, because we don't want a half street section, we want a full street section. So if we didn't have the participation, we would have went with an assessment project.
So the property owner on the south, though, they signed off on constructing their half of the street?
We will be getting those construction plans and then have the development agreement with them as well, and I'm hoping that we can tie that all up when it goes to council.
Okay.
But the thing about this scenario is that those property owners don't have anything that is enticing them necessarily to enter the development agreement. They're wanting to do it and willing to do it.
Okay.
And so we don't have to bring anything through for their portions because they're not asking for a replat.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to chime in on that briefly, that infrastructure improvements. This one's a little bit unique in that, as you guys are talking right now, that we've got a developer on one side of the street that wants a plat and wants to build something. And so we have our checks and balances to hold them accountable for their portion of that infrastructure in that street. And I think it was Commissioner Kays that just mentioned, so typically in that scenario, to avoid a half-street construction, which we want to do, we don't want to continue half-street constructions. Justin will attest to that too in the engineering office. But to avoid that, our normal or conventional way of doing that would be to have the city participate with the developer on the north side, and we'd pay for the south half construction, and then assess that cost back to those south properties. Again, I think just like Commissioner Kay's walkthrough. But in this case, the people on the south half want to participate with the north half. They can likely get it done cheaper than our involvement in the whole thing. Typically when the city's involved, or if we have to bid or be part of the bid, it's going to cost a little bit more. So I was trying to walk through that with staff. How are we assured that the south half gets done with the north half property owners? That's really the question in my mind, and probably the question in your minds. I think the best way to do that is to, through the construction plan approval process, we could require a development agreement from the south half participants as part of the construction plan approval. We can't require a development agreement of them for a plat because they're not platting anything on the south side, so that doesn't work. But we can link it to the approval of the construction plans. And I think that's probably the best solution we could come up with as staff, is to do it that way. And I think that solidifies it well enough to have some assurance that it'll all get done.
Heath, is this something that we could codify in our ordinances so that we have this not just as a policy or a desire going forward, but codified in our ordinance book?
Yeah, it is kind of a unique situation where you have the opposite side of the street wanting to participate. And so
I'm just thinking, so one or the other, right? Either you get two parties that participate, in which case, if you do, you can do a development agreement, or the city participates and assesses it back. But in either case, we're not going to move forward with any half streets in the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea to help solidify that as an option for either of those two scenarios. And then it spells out, what's the expectation, and then the developer that's wanting the plat and is on the hook to build their half knows what the expectation is. And when we pull the other half of the roadway in, they too then know what the expectation is. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, and it's going to
I'm
have
wondering
to.
if that would best suited in the subdivision regs or the engineering design standards, or a combination of both. We could give that some thought.
Yeah, and I think, we're going to have to take a look at it, for properties that are, in this situation, both sides of the roads in the city limits, but we also need to have that policy for where the property's not in city limits, and what we want to be doing there, so we don't back ourselves into a corner of having to address a half street when 20 years later, after somebody wants to annex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and not to get too far off subject, but really that's another point we've been talking about at the staff level, Commissioner Kays, is we've got a couple streets right now that are half street sections. One of them in the spotlight lately is 14th. The north half's adjacent to county land, at least a good majority of it is. Non-annexed land, I should say. And then another one over on 16th Avenue, up towards Valley View in that area.
Have we talked about a scenario where we would build that, to today's standards, using today's money, and then at the time it would annex into the city, we would assess it at that point in time?
Correct. Yeah, that's actually what we're doing with 16th this year. That's on the slate to be constructed this year. We're working with those property owners to the north, because now that half street section is fully built out to the east and the west. So it's kind of silly. We've got this neck down, narrowed half street section right adjacent to an elementary school and connecting to 2nd Street and then leading on into Valley View subdivision. It's just not ideal. But long story short, the mechanism there is we could have built that out at the time and done the north half at the city's expense, but we can't act on an assessment until that property is annexed. That would have been the only holdup. So and that's what we're doing right now. We're going to build it at our expense. We're going to park that assessment and file it formally. We just can't recoup the money until that land is annexed. And that's the best solution we've been able to come up with for those scenarios. But again, memorializing that, kind of like what we're talking about, memorializing these other options to avoid these half streets, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, because I think too, I mean, it even helps from a planning perspective that, as we see development, we want to grow concentrically like, the rings of a tree. But as we start bumping into those areas that are in the county, and we have a developer that wants to develop in the city, maybe it'd be more onus is put on them to try to work with those adjoining property owners to maybe go in on the front end that, the non-city property is going to, their property is going to be worth more when there's a full street in front of it. And if they start looking at it from that perspective, maybe we need to be looking at engaging those people that are in the county as part of that development game as well.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, of when it's development driven, then the city might already, in their CIP, I mean, they might already have that projects allocated, and so they can't just front the money right away when it is developed. You can't anticipate it. And so too, I checked with Colin DeYoung, who's the engineer on the project, and we will be able to get the construction plans for the southern half, because they're going to put it out to bid on one project. And so we'll get that development agreement, because there's no replat tied to that, but it still needs to be approved by council, potentially. And then, so we can have them all wrapped up at the council meeting when this plat would go forward.
I didn't mean to take us down a rabbit hole, but I just thought it was a good conversation to be had, and it's topical.
No, and I think that's great that you guys that you're aware of that, and that it's not something that we want to see continue at the half street section. So great questions.
Yeah, and I do appreciate this discussion, because I want to make sure we're using our best options in how we're preventing these half street sections. And again, this one's unique because you have the willingness of the south half participating, and but still, when you have that willingness, how do you still let them know we're holding them accountable to that willingness? And that's the unique part of this one. And anyway, I appreciate the discussion too, so we can make sure we're doing our best here. So.
All right, is there any other discussions about this plat or the development agreement? There is no public hearing needed for a plat, so if nothing else, I'd ask for a motion in a second.
I'll motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
A motion in a second. Does anyone have any other further comments on it? All right, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on the agenda, item 7 is open public comment. Brandy, did we receive any?
Nope.
All right. Number 8 is new business. Do we have any new business?
Since this is a short meeting, and just to get this out there, for the South Dakota Planners Association annual conference, if you want to jot these dates down, we are planning on having a specific session that will be catered towards board members, and we'll talk about the typical Robert's Rule of Order, parliamentary procedure, ex parte communication, where that can be a nice refresher. And it will be hosted by Todd Kays, our own, and then Brian McGinnis, also from District 3, and hopefully Luke Muller. So what did I say that date will be? Wednesday. So Wednesday is the 25th of October. So obviously this is a ways out, but our lives will get busy. And just so if you want to put those on your calendar, those dates on your calendar now, and try to plan for that, we will.
Mitchell.
It's in Mitchell, South Dakota. So yeah, just was thinking of that. So and that's all I have. Heath is back on though, if he has something.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Heath.
I didn't know if this entire group knew, but we have a star amongst us in Miss Hampton, and she was recently recognized to be one of the top 4 under 40 professionals in the community. So I just wanted to give her some accolades for that.
Well, thank you for
Congrats,
that.
Brandy.
Way
Thank
to
you.
go.
And I can't see her, so hopefully she's blushing right now. No,
She
we
is.
appreciate having her on the team for obvious reasons, and was glad to see her get that award. It was very well deserved.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. It was,
And it's better to be the award under 40 than under 60.
I know, well, yeah, it's even, I'm just 30, okay? So, but in the decade.
Good. Good. Do we have any other new business? Seeing none, do we have any old business?
None that I have.
Any reason to go into executive session? We are adjourned.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.